now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
In just a second to get the scoop on what her thoughts, her take on yesterday, of course.
A lot to talk about, obviously.
Good morning, Sandy. She's still getting her tea, her coffee ready.
She's getting ready.
Is it tea or coffee? What is she
water. Good morning.
Water.
Oh, water.
That's smart. That's what you're meant to drink in the morning.
All right.
Yeah, I'm trying, Aaron.
I need coffee.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's a lot easier to drink water when you're talking a lot. So that certainly does help.
Yes.
That is true.
All right. So what's going on? Obviously nothing to talk about anymore.
So what was your take on the, I was saying earlier that when Dr. Lee was talking yesterday and he gave his anecdote about living in the UK for the last 6 weeks and how it's feasible to live and work and sustain in a community with COVID, like he did, I thought, okay, well, that's it. We've got COVID in the community and they're probably going to push the border opening up. And then the premier came on and then gave us kind of a soft lockdown.
Yes. Well, I think really and truly it's because of fear in the community. Unlike in the UK, some people, I wouldn't say all, because trust me, I've received a lot of messages saying, why on earth are we going backwards instead of forging forwards? But I do very much understand the premier's predicament, especially in light of the fact that some people are making this politically charged. So there are people using this as, trying to score political points, like, oh, reach out to us, we're going to help you, and this sort of thing, which is quite laughable.
I was going to say, what did they do? How?
Yeah, because they're the same people who said that they would have opened up in September. So, people are being a bit silly, I think, at some level. But I also understand the fear factor. My personal opinion is you're kicking the can down the road, and you don't have a magical ball to tell you what down the road looks like. I mean, you do not know.
It will look probably the exact same way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand the fear factor. I have a 5-year-old. Obviously, nobody wants their child to get this. And that's why I got vaccinated, because I'm trying to create this bubble around my own child. But there are big holes in the bubble when other people in the community refuse to do their part. So, I mean, it continues to be.
So why not? Aaron had a good point. Why not just mandate vaccinations?
I wish they would. I honest to God wish they would. But again, that takes a degree of, as Mr. Saunders often says, testicular fortitude. That when you have a population this size, that would not be a popular decision, even if it's the silent minority or the vocal minority, which in my opinion it is.
It usually is.
Yeah, when we see the number of people kicking up about vaccinations, obviously over 70% have gotten vaccinated. So it's not the majority. It's always that vocal minority. And, they're out there with this message and they're trying to legitimize themselves by getting together with, physicians who don't seem to be able to take a really firm position on where they stand. Like, people are confused when certain people open their mouths because it's never the same message. So I wish that they would mandate it. I think that at some level, we're going to have to start mandating it, whether it's for people coming in, and then that'll get people to start realizing mandating for everyone is coming. Every other vaccine is mandated. What's the difference? Yeah,
I mean, you can't go to some countries unless you have a vaccine. There are vaccine requirements. You come to the Cayman Islands, COVID-19 vaccines required.
Yeah.
That's simple. So, I mean, I think that eventually there will be so many restrictions put in place on the unvaccinated that hopefully they will come to their senses, because their quality of life will be seriously deteriorated. But you know what? If you want to be unvaccinated and stay home like a hermit, knock yourself out. But going out there and exposing yourself to other people, I think is really, really unfortunate.
I also think insurance companies should say, listen, if you don't want to be, we'll cover you. If you don't want to be vaccinated, that's fine. When you do get sick from COVID-19, we will not cover your expense.
I think they're just going to have to do higher premiums for just like smokers, just like
not everybody.
It should increase your
everyone.
Not for everyone,
right.
No, for them, just like a smoker or like your life insurance.
Yeah, you don't want to be you don't want to be vaccinated. Your premium is $2,000 a month.
I mean, it's going that way. It's not like showing your vaccine history is nothing new. This is not. I mean, I've been showing my vaccine history. I had to show that my children are American. I had to have a couple different documents to prove that I am a full-blown American citizen. Part of that was I just showed my vaccination history in the U.S., which spanned over many years.
It's going to be like showing a passport. You know what I mean? It's going to be a vaccine passport is what it's going to be.
Just vaccines. I mean, I don't want to delve into your your history and
don't care. Just tell me if you're vaccinated against
or anything. I just want vaccinations. That's all.
Why are you on penicillin?
I don't get I
mean, I think it's I think I agree, and there's nothing. I was going to say that there's nothing wrong with that, because you are at a higher risk, substantially higher risk of getting COVID and actually becoming sick because of it if you're not vaccinated. So why wouldn't insurance companies take that into consideration when they're looking at your coverage? I think they very well should. So I think it is coming, and these are the realistic elements. Like, everyone says, oh, this is my decision to make. Okay, it is up to a point, but your decision also comes with consequences, and the consequences will be you can't go certain places, you can't travel into certain countries, and your insurance premiums are going to skyrocket and all those things. So
it's just to me, it's like, yes, it's your decision to make, but you're more likely to catch COVID and spread COVID and let it mutate. but it's your decision to possibly infect our children who can't get vaccinated. And then what if one of them dies? You're okay with that? Like, that's where I'm not understanding the thought process between people that are completely fine to get a vaccine. They just are refusing on some weird YouTube, Facebook conspiracy.
Here's the thing, though. On the flip side, is if we were going to open it on October 14th, we would have COVID-19 in the community. It's just going to be a reality. So why the freak out when we have, we're 30 days out and we've got 7 cases in the community? That's how it's going to be.
Exactly.
So why are we going into this?
I think, Blake, it comes down to understanding people. You know what I'm saying? People were just not ready. Even that October 14th date.
We've almost
we're mentally trying to comprehend what that means. And the more that they kick back and the more they're having this discussion on social media and, whatever, more people are getting afraid, like, okay, I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready. Sometimes you have to kick people in to the water to teach them how to swim.
Yeah.
And our people who are very famous for doing that sort of behavior, by the way, with their own children, that you've got everybody saying, oh, when I was a kid, my father just dropped me off in East End and took off in the boat and came back an hour later and I was still alive. That type of mentality. That type of mentality.
Kids in the canal and saying, figure out how to get out. Now you won't do it again, right?
That's why I've argued that you need to have a permit to have a child. But anyway, that's another.
I think that type of mentality of we just need to pull up our bootstraps and prepare for certain things is just, really foreign to a lot of people. We don't have the vantage point of remembering diseases like polio, like smallpox that devastated people. Someone sent me a picture yesterday of someone who has smallpox. And I mean, the disfigurement, the horrible death, we don't have that reference point. So it's easy for us to kick back against vaccines and modern medicine. Although every time we're sick, we run to a doctor.
Well, you can go to HSA where you get vaccinated
and see all the posters
and see all the pictures and posters.
Even tetanus.
Of kids and whatever that have those old diseases. It's not a pretty sight.
And people are not. And I think part of it is failures, I think, on governments as well, not just in the Cayman Islands, but around the world, of putting the message out there that these diseases still exist because no vaccine is 100%. It's only 100% in perception if you actually do a good job of vaccinating everyone, because then again, you protect the children and others who cannot, get vaccinated. So for example, whooping cough, I think I mentioned this before, has had a resurgence in places like Australia because of this anti-vaccination movement. And
the measles went through the US not too long ago.
So tell me why. Okay, so people aren't ready. Why push the goalpost or kick the can down the road all the way to the end of the year? Why not say, okay, it's not October 14th, maybe November then. Let's see.
Well,
here's
a crazy idea. And I see people putting this up and it's like people set artificial goalposts in their own minds that don't really make any logical sense. So everybody's like, give us Christmas. It's like, okay. So I think that's what it is. Let's get through the end of the year, the last quarter of the year. We're in it. Give me until Christmas. Let's have Jesus or Santa visit my house, and then we'll see what happens. There's also a thought process, which is a lot more logical, that maybe by then children will be eligible for a vaccine.
Well, some children, I think, by then.
5. We're saying at least like down to 5.
Yeah, which is good.
Which is good. I mean, but
that would be
that includes your kid.
That would be under yours,
so,
my
kick it down the road a little bit. Buy the drug companies and scientists a little bit more time with COVID, and let's reevaluate where we're at. Now, here's the irony of it. The UK's what's the UK body that we're always relying on for information?
Their public health system or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever they're called. They actually said to this government, open the borders. You guys are ready. Open the borders. There's nothing that's going to change now versus, next month or next year. We think you guys are ready. And here's the kicker. Not only did the UK public health, or whatever their equivalent is called, say that, but local physicians who were part of the medical and dental clinic, every single one of them said, open the borders.
See, I mean, if we go through this where we've been listening to the science and to medical professionals, now we're just suddenly not.
Yeah.
We can't pick and choose. Like if we're going to be, and then all of a sudden we're picking and choosing like anti-vaxxers.
Well, that's why it sounded like Dr. Lee was going to say, okay, you know, this is
but
how
Dr. Lee doesn't make the decisions, right? Dr. Lee, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
he
should consult the CMO.
Definitely consult.
Yeah, but he's ultimately not the decision maker. And so this is where politics plays into the whole situation. And, you know, I guess it is what it is in terms of that part of things.
Well, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about this judgment yesterday.
Yes, we're going to talk about it in significant detail tomorrow.
What is the story? What's the quick story on this?
The short version of it
you went to court yesterday.
Yes. So John Felder got a $105,000 judgment against me because the court is of the opinion that he's a business person in his community with a stellar reputation. The reason why the court has that misconceived perception about John Felder is completely my fault. I didn't do what I needed to do. And I'll tell you what, to explain it to people, it was 2019. I was in the middle of multiple cases, which have now all been dealt with and gone away. But the critical time period that I had to deal with this, I didn't deal with it. Now, obviously, I can't repeat what was said at that time. But what I can tell you is on tomorrow's show, we're going to show things like how John Felder was terminated from his job and not that he left under medical reasons like he wants to claim. We're going to show how a joint liquidators report shows that this guy owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to the company because he was out there borrowing money from Tom, Dick, and Harry and using the company and his personal self as guarantee and collateral and not using the money for those purposes. So we're gonna dig into the details. We're gonna look at the judgment to see what the judge concluded and what the reality of the situation is. And they're two very, very different things. But the advice I would give to people is this is where you really shouldn't play lawyer. Now, I know I've been playing lawyer for a while. And in the criminal realm, which is very, very different, I've been able to successfully pretty much win every single case, almost. One exception, but out of like 12. But this particular case was very, very different. And I should have, now hindsight is 2020, I should have gotten myself a lawyer. I'm definitely appealing this. You know, this guy has over $300,000 that he owes other people. He's not going to get a dime from me to try to pay that back, or he probably won't even be paying it back, to be honest. But, you know, he's not going to get any money from me to try to live his retirement life, you know, for the rest of whatever time he has, because nothing I said was actually untrue.
Yeah.
But it has to be put before the court in order for the court to be able to adjudicate on those bases. And that wasn't done properly. And so I am looking for a lawyer. If there's any really good civil lawyers out there, this would be a court of appeal situation. You know, we're going to take it all the way to the highest court if we can, because this is a grave travesty of justice. The irony of it is everyone in this community, when they hear John Felder's name, they go, Are you kidding me? How anybody can come to the conclusion that this guy had a stellar business reputation is shocking. But the court, the judge, can't make a decision based on public perception. She or he has to make the decision based on what is presented to them. So his lawyers did a good job of, you know, painting him to be this business person who claims that, you know, he was doing business in Cuba, never had a contract to show for it, very speculative. But, you know, all these things that he threw out there, they did a good job of painting that picture. But that picture is nowhere near the actual reality. So tomorrow's show, I want to delve into that. I want to look at the judgment. We're going to go through it and then look at the reality based on documentation that we have. We have the termination letter. We have the settlement and deed letter where he didn't deliver in a car for 3 years. And local businessman, you know, Dale Crichton had to sue him in order to get fulfillment of that contract. We're going to look at the joint liquidators report. We're going to look at the fact that these same lawyers who you know, argued his case about what a stellar reputation he had, when the liquidators were asking them to provide information as they're legally required to do so, and respond to certain things through this liquidation process, they never responded because they were unable to do so, I guess, based on his instructions.
Sounds
So
like
we're
a
going to
lot.
break it down. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot.
Guns
All right,
blazing.
Sandy. All right, Sandy, we got to jump.
Yeah.
Have a great day. We'll catch you tomorrow.
All right, guys. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
see you later.
Bye.
All right, folks. So the truth doesn't always prevail in court, especially, like I said, if you are not careful with the technicalities. You see, this is where, people have a law degree for a reason. And I wish to stress that. A lot of times people call me like, oh, Sandy, you're always in cases, blah, blah, blah. And I always tell them, the first thing I say to them, they tell me their situation. And then the first thing I say is hire yourself a lawyer. I take a risk doing what I do. And as you can see in this particular instance, that risk did not pay off. So my advice would be to hire a lawyer. And that's what I'm going to be looking to do now. So a lot of people have reached out and said to set up a GoFundMe kind of situation, CMR legal fund. I guess we can look at those options, but the most immediate urgency is to find someone who's willing to take the case on to have this travesty of justice undone. And it isn't going to be an easy feat. So I'm looking for someone with, good, what do we call it? Good experience, especially in civil litigation, obviously, experience in civil litigation. And more importantly, at the court of appeal level, because that's really important. That's the highest court locally before we get into like the Privy Council and that sort of thing. So if you know any lawyers, message me. And I hate to say it, but this is the sort of time when you need a good English lawyer. I sit there every day and I watch the court system, and they seem to wield a certain amount of power that, others do not. So any of my English friends out there, please give me a ring, give me a dingle, please. I'd like to chat with you. So yes, it is what it is, folks. He's got a judgment, but that judgment will most certainly be appealed. I thank you. A lot of you guys have been messaging me, and I thank you for your messages. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to look at, because the devil really is in the details, and I will explain from a legal perspective where certain mishaps happened. And again, when you're trying to represent yourself, there is this element of you not knowing procedurally that certain things should be done. And so, yeah. All right. So good morning to everyone. I'm looking at all of your comments. So I'll try to go through what transpired yesterday. That's why I don't want to talk about John Felder this morning, to be honest. We've got more important business to talk about, in a sense. Leroy, good morning. Alice, Barbara's here. Good morning, Dawn, Keisha. I saw someone, Andy, just mentioned that we need to listen to Dr. Lee. Trina Foss, not just Dr. Lee, but technically we're not listening to UK Public Health, and we're not listening to the local medical professionals from the Medical and Dental Council, because they've all said open the borders. I understand the government's decision. Do I agree with it? I think it's a little bit... Okay, let me see if I can explain this. I agree with it from a political perspective. So if I were in office at this particular time, I would likewise make a similar decision. I do not agree with it from the perspective of the science. So this is where, even for myself in my head, there is a clear conflict. So the science doesn't support us keeping our borders closed indefinitely or forever. We're going to have to open the borders. And I'm going to find the video that I'm thinking of that talks about how, everyone is going to get this thing. It's going to be, and there was someone said, I was listening to one of my podcasts, someone said, this is going to go from being a pandemic to just being endemic. And endemic means like, everybody gets it. It's like the seasonal flu or cold or whatever. Now, it's not like those in the sense that the side effects are going to be the same, but it's going to be like those in the sense that it's going to run through the entire community. Now, the only line of defense you have, and I don't care what you anti-vaxxers want to say, the only line of defense you have that is proven to really be effective is that you need to protect yourself with available vaccines. Now, I see someone said, talking about the layering. So the mask wearing, which by the way is now mandated again. So make sure you pull out your mask. I've actually ordered some because the custom ones that I have made, or the material that they're made of, is a little bit thicker. And I find that sometimes they're very, very difficult to actually breathe with. So I do have some other vaccines that I've ordered. By the way, let me just remind you guys, YouTube, or regular YouTube channel, is back up. So if you're watching us on YouTube, I see we've got in one channel 3 people. That was the backup one. And then on the other one, we've got 53 people. That one is back up. So that's the regular channel. We appealed YouTube's latest decision against us, and we won. So they just made a mistake. Artificial intelligence trying to look at the title of a video and decide what it's about. So they thought, ironically, that it was COVID misinformation. And so I appealed it and I said, watch the video. Have a human being watch the video, and don't have some AI, some artificial intelligence, tell you that this is incorrect medical information. And sure enough, we won the appeal. So we're back on YouTube. Yay, us. These social media platforms can be a little bit tricky at times in terms of how they operate. So I understand the government's move, but the science says, right, vaccinate yourself. That's the only way you're going to get any protection. Masks are now going to be mandated. So I saw someone commenting something about, how do they protect themselves? Because now it's in the community. But y'all know how to protect yourself. It's called get a vaccine. It's called wear your mask. It's called wash your hands and sanitize. It's called social distancing. Those are the ways that you protect yourself. And to think that we are almost 2 years now into this pandemic and people still are asking that rudimentary question, to me says, what is going on here? Are we really that intellectually challenged? Are we really that challenged in common sense? Because this is a common sense situation. There are ways in which you can protect yourself and that you should take to protect yourself. And it shouldn't be the government forcing you to do the layering and forcing you to do those things. But as it turns out, here we go. This is exactly what the government has had to do. Good morning, Jose. Morning, Louis. Diamond Princess is here. JD Whitaker, what's up, my friend? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Jermaine, Miss Charlene. This is how you layer up and how you protect yourself, right? So let us go through this again. Sandra is saying that's what I'm hoping for, a vaccine for 5+ to protect a large portion of our children. Maria says, I really don't get it. We will always have COVID when our doors open. It's something we have to live with. At this rate, we will never open up if the Caymanian people expect to live in a bubble forever. Just bite the bullet, have proper protocols, and get on with life. Anne is in agreement. Listen to Dr. Lee. So here's what we know, folks. You have personal responsibilities, and then as a community, we have shared responsibilities. Your personal responsibilities make a huge difference. Physical distancing. Stay at home if you're sick. That's why your schools are telling you. If your children have the sniffles, if they have a temperature, they're going to start temperature checking again. Now, ironically, temperature checking, the science does not support that temperature checking will make a difference here or there as it relates to a COVID infection, because a lot of people don't get a temperature as a first sign of having coronavirus. So temperature checking is one of those things that, people didn't get the memo. Again, this is medical science. People did not get the memo that temperature checking doesn't really help. So temperature screen checks isn't worth it. That's the science, right? So you can have a fever, but apparently 1/2 to 2/3 of infected people have no symptoms at all. So checking their temperature will not identify them. What is more is that the normal body temperature is standard at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That actually might be outdated information. Hear me carefully. Y'all listening to this? Here's a mic drop. I want y'all to listen very carefully. That 98.6 degree Fahrenheit comes from research that was published in 1868. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Hello. No, you can't be serious. You see, this is what I'm talking about. Right? How ridiculous is that? You guys are relying on information from I didn't say 19. I said 1868. Where's my calculator, people around here? Do the math for me. 1868. We're now in what year? 2021. That's 153 years. Are you kidding me? Nobody's alive now that was alive 153 years ago. So outdated information, and we're still using that as the standard of norm. Well, hear this interesting tidbit. Stanford University researchers determined that the body temperature of men, different apparently, born in the early to mid 1990s. Well, you know what? We're an evolving species, folks. The truth of the matter is there are things that change about us. Just like viruses mutate and change, human beings are also mutating and changing. So if you're born in the early to mid 1990s, on average, your body temperature is 1.06 degrees Fahrenheit lower than that born of men in the early 1800s. Isn't that interesting? Wow. Shocking, especially since we are relying on a temperature standard from 1868. What accounts for this? Well, apparently, improvements in public health, hygiene, standards of living have actually reduced the metabolic rate of modern human beings. That's what this researchers are speculating. So that's some of the reasons they think could be a contributing factor. They know it's lower, and a degree is a significant difference over that amount of time. So basically, 100 years, the human temperature has changed. Folks, these things are just so interesting to me. I don't know how interesting you find this sort of stuff, but I am always intrigued when you know that the human species is constantly evolving and changing, and our very genetic makeup and DNA is subject to change as well. So they say that the implication is that temperature guns are aiming at a moving target, right? And you have to know what a person's baseline temperature is first. Like, what is normal for them? Infrared temperatures, everybody wants to use those because, they're contactless, but they're not 100% accurate. So they can be thrown off. That's why when you go to the doctor and you're in the emergency room, my daughter was there last week, they're not checking your temperature with an infrared gun. No, they're doing it the old-fashioned way. Under the tongue or under the arm, right? Because infrared temperature guns can be thrown off by all sorts of things. Direct sun, radiant heat, hats, sweat, incorrect positioning on the forehead, drafts like in the air, all these things, and that's according to the Food and Drug Administration. So according to a COVID-19 screening study in Brazil, and this is one of the few real-time studies that they've compared the use of infrared thermometer checks with the scratch and sniff tests, which assess the loss of smell, which is another COVID symptom. They found that temperature checking failed to detect COVID-19 infection, while an olfactory test, that's the scratch and sniff. So you scratch it and sniff it, because one of the things you're more likely to lose is your sense of taste and smell. So the olfactory tests they found might be useful. So as we transition through life with COVID, There are a lot of tests out there. There are a lot of studies that are being done simultaneously all over the world. There are medical professionals and scientists who are looking at very specific things as it relates to this virus. So this particular one out of Brazil was looking at, well, how effective are temperature guns? Let's compare it to something else that we know that a lot of COVID patients get, which is the loss of smell. So that's the olfactory test. Now, let me just pause here for a second. I've heard some local physicians talk about the fact that, they are wanting the government to rely on them as some experts because they are a general physician. I don't know what makes them an expert when it comes to COVID. I don't know if they feel like, they've done a lot of research and they've done a lot of reading. Some of them are opening their mouths, and what they're saying doesn't lead me to believe that that is the case at all. So just because you are a doctor doesn't mean that you're well versed to speak in COVID. Like, I think you need to position yourself to say why you should be listened to when it comes to COVID. Why? What research have you done? What medical journals have you read? Have you done specific, epidemiology courses? Have you upgraded your skills? Have you upskilled your, listen to me. Physicians are, people who need to constantly be in the know. And I find that that isn't the case, unfortunately. And so a lot of times, they themselves are not upgrading their skill set. Something like a pandemic happens, and then they say, "Ooh, I'll volunteer to tell you stuff," but their information's outdated. They don't have a clue what's going on. It's just like, why would we be listening to you? I know there's a particular physician this island. Every turnaround, he's like going away, getting a new certification, attending a course, trying out new techniques, and that's what you have to do. And the medical profession, specific to your area, by the way. So if you have an area specialty, that's what you need to do to remain fresh and to keep your skill set where it should be. I'll never forget, years ago, there was a surgeon at the HSA, and I went to him to talk about a particular procedure, and he was using a quite outdated procedure. And so when I started talking with other medical professionals, they said, listen, yes, his procedure is outdated, and these are the things that the pros and cons of that. But you always want a physician to do what they know, right? And do what they're familiar with. So if he doesn't have any experience in this new procedure, you wouldn't be sensible to be expecting him or asking him to perform it. You need to go find a physician who has done that countless times and is so well versed on it that you're not somebody's guinea pig. And I thought about that. And I thought that that was a very, very interesting way to look at it. And so a lot of times, whether it's like a seemingly cosmetic procedure or whatever it is, a physician will recommend to you what they're familiar with and what they know. It doesn't mean that it's the latest procedure, the best procedure, or whatever, but it's what they know. So keep that in mind. Jake, good morning. He's in agreement with opening the borders. So Jake says what's happening now is the exact same thing that's going to happen next month when we open. So what are we going to do then? Open and lock down again. Makes no sense to me. Louis says, see what happens. Not enough examples in the world. Maria thinks that Dr. Lee makes the decisions. He doesn't. And no, he didn't change the law. I want to talk about that, Maria, because that is a bit of misinformation that is out there about Dr. Lee. Now, listen, and in the minds of a lot of people, Dr. Lee has fallen from grace. Now, I actually want to spend some time addressing this because I think it needs to honestly be addressed. So there have been people in this community who have been talking about Dr. Lee and his, there was some case like years ago, like he doesn't even look like the same doctor, where he was involved in, a young child having died. And there was an actual investigation that was carried out. And in that investigation, he was actually exonerated. Now, the interesting thing is when people have talked about this case and they have sent this information around, they've just screen captured it and they've not said what the outcome of the case was. So I've had people send it to me and I say, right, okay, that's fine. But I know for a fact that Dr. Lee was actually exonerated. So here someone says, I'm just trying to see if I can find one of the posts. But anyway, they've been in circulation. I'm sure that you guys have seen them. They have, not been accurate in terms of the outcome. Now, there are a lot of physicians who under their watch, someone has died. Does that mean that the physician was at fault? Well, a medical, let me just see if this is one of them. No, there's another one. Anyway, it's been circulating. I'm sure you guys have seen it. So, an investigation was carried out and it was found that he was actually not legally or medically at fault for the young child's death. If you're all that interested, I'm sure that you could go and find the respective report about what transpired and have a read of it for yourself. If an independent body has concluded that he was not at fault, what do you want? Like I said, there are people here all the time that are killing people, unfortunately. On the operation table, things happen. There's a risk involved in going through any sort of a medical procedure. So there is a risk involved in surgery. There's a risk involved in anesthetics. If they put you under, there is a chance you will not wake up. And every physician will tell you that. The anesthesiologist meets with you. Even if it's a small risk or some surgeries that are a little bit more risky than others, they should be advising you that this is the risk and you may lose your life. We saw just a couple months ago, someone here who lost her life in the community for what was supposed to be a relatively simple exploratory procedure. And then I had other people messaging me, oh, well, that physician has done other surgeries where, he's nicked people's bowels and stuff before. You know what? It actually happens all the time. People get their bowels nicked I had a girlfriend during a C-section, her bowels were nicked and she was almost killed. If they didn't air ambulance her out of Cayman, she would have been dead. Her newborn without a mother. I mean, this is the reality of surgeries. Unfortunately, sometimes it's negligence and sometimes it's just a byproduct of having the procedure. Like when they go in there cutting, they're going in there unguided. They don't always see, it's not as easy as you guys want to think. That's why you're not a physician. That's why you need to have a steady hand, amongst other things, other technical and proficiencies, to be a physician and to be able to operate on people and so on. So this bit of information that Dr. Lee changed the law, Dr. Lee doesn't have the power to change legislation here in the Cayman Islands. The legislation was changed by the legislators because that's what they do. Now, here's the thing that confuses me about people, right? So I received this thing about Dr. Lee and people are like, oh, Dr. Lee changed the law and he can't do this. And now you have to get permission in order to bring a vaccine in. I'm like, come again? Y'all know that sometimes you don't really make any sense when you open your mouths. And you see, this is the difference between me and the politicians. I don't actually care whether you like it or not when I tell you the truth. A lot of times I know you guys don't like it, but that's not why I'm here. So I'm not here to make friends, right? I'm not here to, trust me, if you're a card carrying member of Sandy's friendship circle, which is very, very small and very, very tight, it has been closed. We're not accepting any applications. We're not entertaining anyone. Okay. I have a lot of acquaintances. That's a much wider circle. But in terms of that friendship circle, ooh, that's very, very tight. Okay. And I like to keep it that way. And I'm not in the business of trying to induce anyone to become my friend. I don't care. And so at some level, the cold hard truth has to be able to stand on its own merits. And you guys might not like it, but I'm trying to tell you the truth regardless of whether you like it or not, right? It's not about likability. I know a lot of people don't like me. I'm just like, oh, well, do I care? Not really. It doesn't hurt my feelings, so it's okay. But the truth of the matter is, any drug that comes into this country has to be subject to regulation. You can't just allow drugs into the Cayman Islands and anybody can bring it in and anybody can call it whatever and anybody can administer it and put it out there. That doesn't make any sense. That would be crazy for the people of the Cayman Islands to think that that is how this process works. And no one has directly addressed this. And this is why I'm taking a little bit of time now to address it, because there are people out there who've made some commentary on it who have actually gotten it wrong. So someone sent this to me and this was in circulation. You know, everybody wants to circulate something now on WhatsApp, and they're all lawyers, they're all QCs, they're all medical professionals, they're all epidemiologists, virologists. You know, everybody is an expert. So it says that the parliamentarians you elected, who are members of cabinet, went in behind closed doors and created the control of COVID-19 vaccination regulations. Let me stop right there. Okay, I'm actually going to screenshot this. I want y'all to see that I'm not making this stuff up. This was actually forwarded around on WhatsApp. And my people, you will perish for the lack of understanding and knowledge. And I really want to say, stop making yourselves look so foolish with certain things. You know, when you put together, you know, these messages, right, and you send them around, you look stupid to me when you say things like, oh, they went behind your back and behind closed doors. Where else do legislators create laws except behind closed doors? Let me ask you a question. When the previous government, and I want to make myself very, very clear, there are a lot of you who are trying to use this measuring stick. And my gosh, we have so many comments. Charlene, I'll post some comments up here, but let me just say this. All the COVID regulations, if that is the litmus test, all of the COVID regulations have been done behind closed doors and behind your back. Alden never came to you when he was making the regulations during lockdown and said, oh, can I get your permission to lock y'all down? Stop being ridiculous. Okay? Stop the foolishness, because it's either two things that are going on here. Either you guys really are not as intelligent as I want to believe my people are, and I'm giving y'all too much credit in that department, or you have such a flimsy disposition. Like someone said yesterday, you hated the last government, you're complaining about them 24/7. Now this government is in, you've already fallen out of love with them. It's not about love or like, it's about the truth. And the truth is, all COVID regulations have been done in the exact same manner. In fact, do you guys not remember how speculative it was during the last election, during the last administration, when they would pass something, before they even passed it, we were on here speculating, as well as the rest of you, about what was coming down the pipeline, because they didn't tell you until it happened. And a couple times, Alden got pissed off at us here at CMR because we knew what was coming and we put the story out there. This is what the government's going to do. Well, apparently he didn't want y'all knowing before he said it. So the very first sentence here, that all your elected members went behind closed doors, is ridiculous. Okay, that's what legislators do. They sit behind closed doors and they make legislation. And when it comes to emergency legislation like COVID, folks, there is nothing unusual about that situation at all. Kevin, I see you. I'm coming to you in just a minute. So then it says the regulation places the vaccination program in the hands of the chief medical officer, a pain specialist, alone to make decisions on the importation and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in the Cayman Islands. They gazetted it the same day they passed it in cabinet to ensure that it came immediately into law. Y'all ain't got no damn sense. I'm sorry. But once again, That's how all of the COVID regulations have been done. So if the very first paragraph of this statement is completely false, right? Why am I then, good morning, Pastor Blair, why am I then to believe anything else that they have to say? They don't understand the basics of legislation, of regulations. So clearly they are no experts in this regard. So that's where now, as a person with a lot of common sense and a little bit of learning, I say, whoever wrote this ain't got no sense. And I should not continue to entertain the rest of this statement. You see what I'm telling you? Be careful the things that you let into your head as truthful. Because if they're not truthful, they're just simply not truthful. Here's the thing. The chief medical officer has always been responsible for the importation of legal drugs into this country. Let's take a step back and give you an example. The whole cannabis situation. Who is responsible for that? Well, we know because he actually got it wrong. He made a misstep with Doctors Hospital. And that lawsuit was a big smear on the face of the previous government. Be very, very clear. The progressive-led government, the Customs Department, and the chief medical officer, and by extension, the police who carried out the warrant on the instructions of Customs and Dr. Lee. They got it wrong. Now, make no bones about it, that's a very complex case. How do you define cannabis oil and this, that, and the next thing? It's not as easy as people think, and you should try reading the substantial judgment to get an understanding of the things that the judge had to look at. Not only did he make a misstep, but it looks like it might have been deliberate, whatever his intentions were, to stop Doctors Express from being able to carry these, what do they call them? Vapes or whatever, right? He has always had the power, not him, but the position of chief medical officer. Now, you want to talk about the fact that as chief medical officer, and then they put in brackets that he's a pain specialist. Well, honey child, when you all were all up in Dr. Lee's Kool-Aid, back in 2020, this is the message I'm referring to here. When you're talking about, oh, he's the best thing after sliced bread, you guys have actually set up a Facebook page called the Dr. Lee Appreciation Society. That's how much y'all were loving him. That's fine. But he was also a pain specialist at that time. So now y'all trying to have your cake and eat it too, and make the good doctor look bad, talking about, oh, he's only a pain specialist. Well, he's always been a pain specialist. That is his specialty. Now, I've heard the argument, folks, of why is it that he even got the job of chief medical officer? Well, you know what? Let me put it this way. In a small jurisdiction like this, perhaps we could do a better job of selecting certain so-called experts to lead the charge in this community and lead the charge in this country. He had worked with the HSA previously, heading up the pain management clinic. And I don't know on what basis he was hired as chief medical officer, but they must have thought that he was qualified to do the job. Now, here we are in the middle of a pandemic. Would it have been nice to actually have someone who has experience leading pandemics? Oh, yeah, that would have been nice. That would have been super nice. But the man has been in the job for years. And despite what you all think, he relies on the expertise of other people. So here's another kicker. Someone said yesterday, oh, this government is relying on what the UK has to say. I was like, am I hearing these people right? Or have they lost all good common sense? Because you will know, even if you did not listen to previous press briefings, just by listening to this program, way back during the lockdown, I'm like, why are we waiting on the UK? Why are we waiting on this one and that one? Remember at one point, let me just point this out to you, because this shows how incredibly how your brains have little recall when it comes to the actual facts. At one point, Dr. Lee made a misstep about asymptomatic people transmitting COVID. And I pointed it out because I said the latest research shows that there's a lot of asymptomatic people out there who will transmit COVID just as much as someone who's symptomatic. He had to backtrack days later and said that he was relying on information from, I think it was the World Health Organization or somebody. And I did an entire show on this. You know, when you're the chief medical officer, I get that you're watching what the World Health Organization is saying. You're watching what the CDC is saying. You're watching what UK Health, whatever they call themselves, are saying. That's fine. But you also need to be one step ahead and looking at the emerging research as it's coming out and as it's available. And sometimes the World Health Organization is saying something and they just haven't updated their website, which, as I recall, that is what happened in that case. He was relying on old data. And just like days before, they said, oh, no, apparently asymptomatic people will transmit this very, very easily. And now y'all are critical of this government saying, oh, they're relying on what the UK is saying. So did the previous government. You see, I don't listen, if I'm going to judge people, and we stand here every day in judgment of others, because that's the easiest thing in the world to do, really, right? I judged the previous government. I had reasons why I judged them. I'm going to judge this government, and that's what we do here in this program. We're bringing the cold, hard truth. But I'm going to be fair to people and do it on equal footing. So I can't have one standard for the Alden administration, and I certainly can't have another standard for this administration. Y'all like, oh, Mr. Wayne Panton, look, he looks like he's stressed. The memes that were created of Dr. Lee, how in 3 weeks he went from looking fresh and young and vibrant at the beginning of the pandemic, and 3 weeks later, the man looked like he had been through World War II and had the roughest life ever. They were all having a hard time. They were all looking. I mean, there were days when Alden's faces became memes. I have them on my phone, so I should know. Okay? He was making up his face. John was as lost as he could possibly be, right? Now, poor Sabrina. Yesterday, she did really good, I thought. She didn't read, and I told you before, that's the problem. Do not read these prepared speeches. Review what the experts are saying. Review to remind yourself, because sometimes in the moment you forget what you want to say, and then just say it. And I tell you what, that was a marked improvement yesterday. Good on them. But I am going to compare Sabrina to John. And y'all talking about John did a better job. Stop the nonsense. John I did no better job. That man can barely, now, like I said, I feel bad because I don't want to hate on John. But the truth of the matter is he can't really string too many sentences together. He doesn't have the understanding or the expertise to bring any of this across. Well, damn, at least Sabrina has a nursing background and she knows a little bit about the world of medicine. Even if she hasn't been keeping up all these years, she has the capacity to get up to scruff. Do I believe John had the capacity? No. Miss Brenda, good morning. She said she's busy this morning. So this legislation that was passed, folks, putting him in charge is nothing unusual. He's always been in charge. The legislation was made specific to vaccines. Now that we are permitting people, private physicians, to administer vaccines and by extension to be able to import them in. That is why the legislation, the regulations were put in place. It's as simple as that. I could jump up tomorrow as a private physician and be like, I want to bring in this vaccine. No one's ever heard of it. No one knows anything about it. Some person in their basement in Kentucky came up with the vaccine, and now I'm going to bring it in and start shooting it in people's arms. That could never be a position that would be permitted or allowable. That doesn't make any sense. So that is why the regulations were put in place to allow for some measures of control. Now, here's the kicker. I want to say this, and then I know Kevin's waiting. I see Cece's also having some commentary this morning. One of the reasons why this Sinopharm vaccine, which Dr. T is bringing in for his family, has not been approved by UK Public Health is because the vaccine makers themselves, the manufacturers, have never approved or never applied to have it approved for use in the UK. That's why it's only being used in the Middle East, apparently. Now, that's on them. If they don't want to apply and go through the rigorousness of submitting your double-blind data, all of your research, all the criteria, because the UK Public Health will have its own set of criteria, just like the FDA has its own set of criteria. If you want a drug to go to market, folks, these are the protocols. You don't just get it approved. You apply and you submit your research and your documentation. And without that, no one's going to approve a drug to be used on people. So when I heard that yesterday at the press briefing, I had to wonder to myself, why hasn't that been done? Why haven't the Chinese done that? Do they not care for it to be used in the UK, or do they not want to go through those particular protocols? Ask yourselves that question. Dawn says, Miss Sandy's on fire this morning. Cece, bring your own fire to the table. What do you have to say?
Morning. So, as you know, we all did. Morning, everyone. Morning, Sandy.
Good morning. You did another COVID test?
Yes.
Good.
We did at the Georgetown Primary School yesterday.
Okay.
Now they have sent a letter into the dojo, the Georgetown Primary School dojo, saying that whether you got your results back or not, you're still supposed to stay isolated. If our results come back negative, why are we staying isolated until an education department or hospital contact us? We got back the email saying it was negative and signed in you understand? It's made out to Dr. Lee, whoever needs to see it or whatever. Why are we still isolated if we're found negative?
You'd like for me to answer that question, Cece? I think Kevin and I touched on it last night. I think the short answer, which I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't kind of tell you this in advance, but I think the short answer is they are waiting because there might be more than one test that you have to take. So you're taking an initial baseline test for COVID, but they still need you to restrict your movements and to remain in isolation until they can give you the all clear. And I do not believe that that is where they're at with this situation. Now, listen, this is a communication misstep. Kevin, he's a communication expert. I'm going to bring Kevin in. Sure. This is where from the onset, Cece, they needed to explain to everyone very, very clearly what the procedure would be as it relates to getting the all clear. So you have a negative COVID test, but that does not mean that you have the all clear. And here's why. You might have a negative COVID test today, you and your child, but if your child was just exposed to that COVID student the day before, of course you're gonna have a negative test. Next week, your test ain't gonna be negative if you have it.
And
Kevin?
that was just proven by, I believe it was the helper
Yes.
of the individual that first test came back negative, but then several days later was retested and that individual came back positive. So when the contact tracers are carrying out their investigation and you are identified as a potential close contacts to the index case or a positive case, then you got that first test, and then they want to make sure before they give you that all clear that you are in fact going to remain negative, and so you have escaped the grips of the virus.
Yep. So the bottom line, CC, is you're going to have to hold tight. It's proven that you can have the virus and you can still have a negative test in this point in time. Again, that's why everybody keeps talking about this window of, well, how long are people going to stay in quarantine for? You know, is it 14 days? Is it 10 days? That's why that incubation period exists. So hang tight.
Okay, because we really wasn't in contact. Stop. We really wasn't in contact with the affected child. You know, it's just that my son was in the same building. So basically the child would have to pass through the corridor and go upstairs to his class, his or her class. You understand? So I understand everybody being tested. But to say that we were directly in contact with the person or persons, no, we weren't. But I just had that question to say if we,
Yes.
I now that you clarify it for me, thank you
Yeah,
very much.
and CC,
You're
let me
welcome.
say,
And
let me
listen, this
explain.
is where I was going to say, Kevin, that, you know, Kevin and I keep having this conversation around how effective communication is from public health and from, you know, travel time and all these other responsible agencies. It's not, in my opinion, as effective as it could be. And that makes the government look bad, although that's not a political thing. It still reflects on the government or whoever, whatever government is in. They need to do a better job of explaining this. Like, you understood it when we just broke it down to you in 2 seconds. It isn't that complicated to explain. Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons, even though CC said you might not have had direct contact or your child didn't necessarily have direct contact with the child that had tested positive, one of the things that I guess the public health is really trying to look at is really how widespread is the situation, which is why they're testing everyone right now. Because yes, you know that there's 1 or 2 cases, the couple of cases that were identified. Now, from that, really, how widespread is it? Did they infect other people? How many people really have it? How did they get it? So right now they say, you know, we have so many unknowns, we rather err on the side of caution. And so they're taking a bit of a very comprehensive step to see, let's see how bad the problem is. And then we'll dial it down after that. So, I mean, I know it's completely frustrating, but I definitely do support what they're doing. It is something that is not necessarily done in other places of the world, but you got to understand, Cayman is really leading a very good public health response to the pandemic. If you look at the rest of the world, you also see a lot more deaths than in Cayman. That's very telling. People are being protected, and they're just doing their jobs.
That is why I have to applaud the new PAC government with deciding to keep the borders closed, because I really was confused, because at the end of the day, if the borders were open, what else would they had expected to happen? You understand? I mean, one case in the school and they lock it down. It took that for them to see that we're not ready for our borders to be open. You understand? But I applaud their movement. If anybody know, I am very supportive of this government. I encourage them. I support them. They will know when I don't support them. But right now I support them in even though I run my little joke on top of the lives and stuff, that's just for entertainment, to keep people calm in a serious situation. Like, Cayman has been losing their heads from the get-go, because I still don't understand why they buy, you know, all these toilet papers to do with COVID. Like, come on. I still don't get it. But I really love the fact that they made that decision to keep our borders closed, to keep us safe, and let's get our children.
Now, what do you think is going to happen next year when they open the borders, Cece?
Well, I mean, Sandy, I feel like this is something that we will have to live with.
Yes.
You understand?
But you're just not ready to live with it right now.
Yes, especially when it's touching something so tender like our kids.
But that might be the case next year too.
Yeah, well,
especially because, I mean, Cece, I'm going to put you to task a little bit. You have been one of those individuals that is not vaccinated, correct?
You know, I was actually trying to get on the show yesterday to tell you I had a change of heart, and you would not nothing in this world.
Oh my God, no!
Proud of you, Cece.
Want to say thank you to Miss Ellen Schwartz. She has been counseling me, and
my God,
whatever, go and get that job.
Well, you deserve a Burger King or Popeye's gift certificate.
So here's the twist, though. So
Lord, here
I want to tell the world that being that I've decided to get my shot.
Yes.
You do too, Cayman. We can do this together. Get your shot. I got mine.
You know, we did an initiative here and partnered with cities and some bars.
You're gonna take it. What you're telling me is you're gonna have a swoosh of Jack Daniels before you go get your COVID shot.
Not much.
Oh my God! Not the whole bottle, I hope.
No.
You know, we had an initiative here for shots for shots is what we called it.
Yes. Listen, let me tell y'all something about Cece. Now, Cece, I hope I'm not sharing too much of your business. Can I tell them a little bit about how I counseled you about another situation?
Sure, that's fine. Everybody
Okay,
knows
all right.
that already.
All right. So listen, Cece and I go back a little ways. I don't even remember how I met Cece, but anyway, we go back a little ways now, right? Cece has been trying. You guys know the girl will hold down a job. She tries to do right by her family and her kids, and she's made a couple missteps in life, as we all have. And Cece was at a job and she found out that she was pregnant with child number, is it 4?
Yeah.
Yes. And I said to Cece, Cece, wow, you've got 4 children. You are set. You got girls, you got boys. You don't want for anything more. And Cece was like, I don't know, Sandy, like when I'm in my 40s, maybe I want to have another child, after I get in my house. And I was like, girl, what person in their right mind wants to have children in their 40s? Take it from me as a person who's in their 40s and had a child. You don't want to do that, right? And Cece and I had a conversation. I'll never forget it because I was actually in Cayman Brac at Brac Reef, messaging Cece on the phone, sending her voice notes, and we were going back and forth talking about if she was at the stage in her life where she was done with having children. I'm like, look at the pros and cons of this situation. Look at financially. What can you afford? I mean, 4 children, that's tough to afford insurance, school fees, which, in their government schools, that's somewhat reduced really. But, all these other factors, trying to give your children a certain quality of life, give them the opportunity to travel and experience different things. And Cece was dead against initially, having her tubes tied. And by the end of the conversation, Cece, I shouldn't say she was dead against it because she'd actually asked a physician prior to that to do it. I think with child number, was it number 3?
Yeah.
And they refused to do it. So I actually had to make some calls to the HSA and said, you guys need to stop interfering with women's decisions and women's rights to be able to get tubal ligation if that's what they want to do. Because there's a lot of physicians, apparently there were a few at the HSA who were deterring and telling women they couldn't do it, that they needed permission from a parent. They needed, adult women now, they need a position from a husband. Like all this ridiculous stuff which made no sense whatsoever. And I took them to task and I reached out to Lizette personally. And I said, Lizette, this can't be. First of all, that physician is not going to pay for you and to maintain your children. That's the God's truth, right? When you need a couple dollars to go pay for something or get your children a meal, you can't go to physician John Ebanks and be like, oh, you told me that I couldn't get this procedure. Now, are you going to help me mind my children? So we had a very in-depth conversation. We removed the barrier from the HSA's perspective, and Cece actually changed her mind. And I must say, sometimes Cece goes on with the most ridiculous behavior, but there's one thing I love about Cece is she can actually be counseled. You can eventually show her the logic of a situation. And Cece and I have had conversations even about COVID. Like we were talking about the blood clot thing, right? And I explained to Cece, you might think that these people got a blood clot because they had COVID, the COVID shot. But here's the kicker. Blood clots are associated with the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccine, which are not the ones that we're even administering here. The mRNA vaccines have no history of blood clots. So if someone has a blood clot after taking the vaccine, that means that they had it before, or it has nothing to do with the vaccine. It doesn't show causation. And, the more I talked to Cindy about it, the more she was like, you know what, Sandy, you might have a point. Send me some information, send me some research. I'll try to read and understand. We even broke it down, like I was telling Cece, about other things in life that we do that create blood clots. Everything from surgery. So every time you go under the knife, that's a high risk of blood clot. Birth control pills. So most women are taking some form of birth control. That increases your chances of a blood clot. Flying. There's such a thing as DVT, deep vein thrombosis, caused because of getting on an airplane and flying. Now, take someone like Kevin. Again, Kevin, I think these personal stories are important. Everyone knows that Kevin has a heart condition. So he is somewhat at high risk for anything medically that could impact his health. Kevin, what was your thought process when you decided to get the vaccine? You actually have people out there claiming that they have in Cayman myocarditis because of this vaccine, which is ridiculous. But tell us what your heart condition is, and you still got vaccinated.
Yep. Well, I have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Many people know my story. Produced show when I was at Cayman 27 on it, and one of the large reasons why I ended up moving to Florida, because after my heart surgery, I wasn't exactly sure how post-surgery was going to be like, and of course, I needed advanced medical care, which was not available in Cayman at the time. We got Health City that came up and stuff now, but either way, I ended up here, and so my personal decision, even with knowing that I have a heart condition. Well, one, I did speak to people that I trusted, my doctors, about it, as well as my coworkers who are, again, very, very deep into the COVID response. But not to mention, the American Heart Association also endorsed and encouraged people to get vaccinated. So, when you speak to these experts, ones that know me really inside out because they've been inside my heart, as well as people that I work with who I completely trust with my life because they are really true professionals, as well as my own research. When you combine everything, all of the stars aligned, and it was like, that's the right thing and what I needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, think about it this way. Someone who has a pre-existing heart condition, right, made the decision with all of the medical science that is available to him, speaking to his physicians and so on, to get protected from COVID-19, because that's a comorbidity for Kevin, right? That puts him at significant risk if he ever catches COVID-19. So at least he has some protection from the vaccine. So Kevin, thank you for sharing again, because I think a lot of people may not necessarily know your story. So thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm glad that Cece has had a change of heart and that she will get the vaccine. Cece, if you want me to go with you and hold your hand, girl, I'm there with you. It wasn't that bad. I will do it. So let me know. Yeah. So a couple comments coming in. So K-Man 49er, that's a funny name, says, when will the borders be ready to open? I don't know. Jake says, stay on pause. Cab says, Jake Manderson, they're waiting for COVID to completely die out, so maybe 90 years from now. Oh my gosh. I love how y'all keep poking at extending the quarantine for travelers, but for those of you who were tested after possible exposure on the island, suddenly you don't want to quarantine. Child, what's good for the goose, they don't want to believe is good for the gander. Thank you, Elaine's Closet. Kimar says, so what about the person who's not working with the government? How are we going to be paid? Because I can't go to work because my wife works there and I don't work with government. Well, Kimar, this is the arguments for reopening the country. And it's not, the premier said it's not just about economics, but economics, if people can't survive and they can't pay their bills and they can't, do any of that stuff. The real question becomes, at what point does survival in another sense really begin to matter? Because there are people who aren't eligible for a stipend, who don't have the benefit of even getting $1,500 a month. There are businesses that have literally gone under and shut down because of COVID, and it will continue. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult decision. A lot of different moving parts. Because I was listening to you earlier, Sandra, and you're thinking, okay, why push it to later on? Because later on we're going to be kind of having the same type of conversations. But hear me out on this. Looking at it from this point of view, we don't exactly know all of the details that were discussed in cabinet, why they came about making some of the decisions that they did. I know they have a lot of experts that are advising and looking into so many different things, but I'm going to share with you kind of some of my thought process. Again, what you always are quoted saying speculation, not confirmation, but these are some of the logistical things as a disaster planner like myself that I would take into account. And so one of the things, I was not 100% convinced. I'm still not convinced that our medical system in the Cayman Islands was ready for that reopening quite yet. I don't think it was not completely unprepared, but I don't think it was where it needed to be. And so knowing that Cayman maybe had a few more things to work out, that's going to take some time, especially because we're going to get a whole lot more cases confirmed once those borders reopen. And once it's done, There's no undoing it. It's there. And so you want to make sure that you don't do it too prematurely. So getting the medical system really prepared, as well as getting businesses and the public a little bit more prepared, because I believe people were like, you know what? This is happening very, very soon. This is happening in about a month. And so making sure now we know that, hey, this is going to be happening. And so now you really need to, like I keep saying, get your plans together, your personal plan. Businesses need to get their plans together and know how to live with COVID. I don't think enough, what we call risk communication, I don't believe enough was being done ahead of time for the schedule reopening in the middle of October. Now, I believe people have it a little bit more mindset that, yeah, you know what, I need to wake up. I need to know that this bubble is going away. It's not going to be the exact same. So I need to figure out exactly how I'm going to live with it. And so making sure people are doing whatever is necessary to start getting their plans together is a necessary thing. Also, it gives the Cayman Islands an opportunity to get and achieve a higher vaccination rate. We're not exactly where the target goal is, but given that in a few more months will allow Cayman to be even better prepared. And I'm hoping for at least more than 80, 85. My personal goal for Cayman is 90% fully vaccination rate. And if Cayman Islands could achieve that, it's going to be in such a great position to stand up against Delta and whatever else comes after Delta. And then the next thing is, and you kind of touched on it, that by that time, we're probably going to have a lot more eligibility. It's probably going to expand. Sometime between most likely Halloween and Christmas time, you're going to be able to get children 5 years old and older vaccinated. So if you're opening by next year, remember, it takes about 5 weeks from start to finish to complete the series to become fully vaccinated. So let's say November or so is when children, October, November is when children can get fully vaccinated. They will have that protection for at least every 5-year-old individual and older by next year. So you have that immunity established throughout the island, where you have a lot more eligible people now getting that benefit of the vaccine. And then hopefully, again, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's coming up after Delta. We don't know what it's going to look like in December. But hopefully by then, because Delta is starting to improve nationwide here in the United States and around the world, because so many people have gotten it already, and vaccination rates are creeping up. So the situation is now improving. We look like we hit the peak, and now we're coming down that mountain. So hopefully by the end of the year, we're also going to have a lot less people carrying the virus, so less people bringing it into the Cayman Islands. So when you start putting all these things together, you can't look at Cayman alone. You have to look at the whole world.
What's happening in the world?
When you start putting all these things together, that could be some of the things that were discussed in those meetings when they came up with this decision.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this one thing that coronavirus has taught us is to expect the unexpected. You think you're going down on a positive note, and then a resurgence happens. And, like we said, it's something that we're going to just have to learn to live with. And at any given time, we honestly just don't know where we're going to be. So Ms. Brenda has a good comment. Vanessa, first of all, says, to be honest, Alden always looks cool, calm, and collected. He exuded confidence. Girl, I don't know what Alden you're looking at. I will get you, Vanessa, the evidence to the contrary, because somebody sent me, was it this morning? I'm trying to remember if that was on my phone. Anyway, I'll look for it, because there's video footage of Alden doing the most, which did not show someone who's cool, calm, or collected. And in fact, quite ironically, there were times that he was attacking media and other people because he wasn't cool, calm, and collected. So I don't know. Everybody has their own version of reality, but it is much easier when you actually have someone on camera demonstrating these things, because then it becomes very easy to prove what I'm saying to you. So I don't know if you only watched the episodes where you thought, the press briefings where you thought he was cool, calm, and collected, but I saw Alden on more than one occasion saying things and making sideways comments to people that demonstrated a man who was under pressure, and to be expected to a certain extent. I didn't agree with him with them attacking the government. I didn't agree with his government saying Wendy Ledger should have been locked up and thrown in jail, and trying to subvert free speech and all those sorts of things. That doesn't come from people, Vanessa, who will cool, calm, and collected. A donkey story doesn't come from a man who's cool, calm, and collected. A man who's cool, calm, and collected doesn't threaten media like only you would say that because you're a jackass or whatever the heck he said to Wendy. So, Vanessa, I don't know what you were watching, but you weren't watching all the same press briefings as me. But moving along, keep it moving. Brenda has a good question. She says, I have to ask again, why has our health services not retained a qualified person, or at the very least, have a qualified person speak to us? I would really love to hear from an infectious doctor or an epidemiology expert, not unqualified people. So, Brenda, thank you for that comment. Kevin, we are working on, I'm happy to tell Brenda and everybody else, we've got 444 people watching the show right now. I'm happy to tell you guys that we here at CMR are trying to put that expert level panel together. So Kevin, in his position, in his contacts in Florida, are working with an epidemiologist and some experts on his end. We've got some other people who are reaching out to their contacts at Yale University and other places. So Brenda, stay tuned. We're going to do it. Sometimes we can't always sit back and wait for government to do everything. I can't speak to why health services hasn't done it. Again, you know, Kevin and I, we operate in sort of very different areas when it comes to communications and media and getting messages out there. But I think one thing we understand is how that could effectively be done. And the civil service arm, despite them having, you know, GIS and they claim that they're experts and whatever, they don't necessarily, I don't know, they don't necessarily have the resource. I don't think it's a resource issue, but maybe they just don't think about these things. I'm not really sure, but we're thinking about it, Brenda. We have been for a while, and we are working on and putting that expert panel together. So stay tuned. We were hoping for something this week, but this week is already kind of like, today is Wednesday. So it'll probably be sometime next week, because we would like to give you guys enough notice to ensure that you're aware of when that's going to happen. You can listen to the experts. You can call in with all of your questions, et cetera, et cetera. Miss Alba, buenos dias. Oh, by the way, happy Independence Day to Honduras. Someone reminded me that today is Honduras is, I don't know how many years, but it's their Independence Day today, 15 de septiembre. So the September the 15th is Independence Day for Honduras. So happy Independence Day. Miss Sue says, we're grateful for the last 18 months and the position we're in, but unfortunately we're 18 months behind in the COVID world. This is here to stay, and we need to learn how to live with it. Rachel,
I would not say we're 18 months behind in the COVID world, because the amount of folks that are vaccinated is preparing you to be able to survive and beat the COVID world. So that I want to make sure we put it into perspective to say that Cayman's been preparing. There's still some more work to be done, yes. But Cayman is in a much better place to be able to handle the world once it comes back to Cayman.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Rachel says people are complaining, but look at Bermuda, 948 cases, 1 in 68 of the population of 62,000 people are positive. 43 in the hospital, 10 in ICU. Last Friday, there were 28 in hospital and 5 in the ICU. Only 62% of people are vaccinated. The hospital is in stage 2 disaster management. Unfortunately, Rachel, the rest of what you sent got cut off. Charlene says, educate, inform, some truly needs it. Misko is sharing some links, says brace for reality. Charlene, I'm not sure who she's referring to. She said she's real, though. I know I'm a little bit behind in the comments, but I'm not sure who that's referring to. I thank you. Grizz says it's actually 200 years that Honduras is celebrating their independence. Thank you, Grizz, for that information. So again, congrats to Honduras. Ms. Brenda says, I hope if you're not vaccinated, you'll consider it now. Please protect yourself, your children, and loved ones. And by the way, big shout out to Donna Bush. Yesterday, Donna shared at the press conference that she was vaccine hesitant, and she finally decided to do it and to get it done. And she is glad that she did. So as we can see, Kevin, people can definitely change their minds. Cece has admitted to changing her mind. Donna shared that she changed her mind. I also saw Kathy over from Radio Cayman was in the batch of persons that got vaccinated, along with Donna and some other civil servants. So, yeah.
And see, this is where, GIS, the government communications team, they are, they're communicating to an audience. However, one of the things that I'm not seeing as much is really a customized, targeted messaging that is tailored and designed for individuals who are either on the fence or completely against the vaccine, to make sure that the targeting messages now to them. Because just about all of those who are already fully vaccinated, those who already got their communication, they're seeing a repeat message now. And so now things need to evolve, shift over to now be tailored for those folks who really need that message. Things like what Donna Bush did, and her little statement before she had passed it on to His Excellency the Governor, was definitely impactful. When the Honorable Juliana O'Connor also did her statement, because she is able to reach individuals no one else in the Cayman Islands can reach. There are a certain group of individuals who trust her with their lives, and hearing it from her, speaking from the heart, is the only way we would be able to, again, get people to make that change that is really needed. And so she absolutely, I thought that was probably, from all of the different speeches that I've seen throughout my life of seeing her, I think that was probably one of her most impactful statements or speeches that I have ever seen her make. And so I really, really think that was that really won a lot of people over. Again, Donna Bush was another one of those individuals that I believe is a very familiar face, who was in the homes of people for probably before I was born. I believe she was working at Cayman 20s. I'm not sure, but she's been a trusted face that many people could relate to, who is also sharing her thoughts on the whole situation. So when we have people like that really stepping forward, that is the way to really now try to reach some of those people that just the Joe public will not be able to reach.
Yeah. And Brenda makes a good point that Cece now can be an advocate. I think she first needs to do it, but she can now be an advocate to encourage other parents who are adamant about the vaccine to educate themselves and reconsider their position. And I think there's no one who's more impactful than someone who's changed their mind. I mean, I have always from day one been pro-vaccine. I remember when it first was coming, people on this program would say to me, Sandy, are you going to get vaccinated? And without hesitation, I said, yeah, eventually I will. I wasn't in priority categories. Of course, I'm like the elderly and those who are a little bit more at risk than I am get their vaccines first. But I've never had a hesitation towards vaccines of any kind, because that's why I'm here. That's why I'm alive, because of the advent of the advancements in medical medicine, and especially in the world of vaccines, which have saved millions of lives over the years. But it's a different position from someone who was against it, believing a lot of the misinformation that was out there, and for them to now come full circle and say, you know what? Because someone has been sometimes very, very gently, sometimes very much in my face, or whatever method has worked for them, been prodding me to really look at the truth and the pros and cons of the vaccine situation. I have now changed my mind. I'm going to get vaccinated. And it's okay to be afraid, because if you listen to a lot of the rhetoric that has been out there, my God, someone sent me a message yesterday, Kevin. This guy, David Shibley, he keeps messaging me, and I really hope that he stops. But he sent me a message yesterday that was so incredibly disturbing, basically saying that I'm on the dark side, and that that knowing now that you're actually Eastern Star, a demonic sorority in tune with the Freemasons. I don't even know what the hell Eastern Star is supposed to be, but whatever. I asked God to judge you in open view of the people. And I'm just like, God
just something to ignore.
Seriously, I look at it and I go, are people really this crazy? But I suppose if you were one to buy into the words of other people, and you actually believed all this nonsense about demonic sorority, like I said, I have no clue what Eastern Star is. I don't know anything about Freemasons. That's not my business, but I could understand why people are fearful. You bought into all of this nonsense, and you allow people to put fear in your mind and in your heart. I don't fall into that category. Thank God that I have been, my makeup, so to speak, through life experiences is one that people don't put fear into me very, very easily. You know what I mean? And I think that that's probably a good thing. You're able to stand your position a little bit longer. Anthony says, Kevin, are you able to pull up your Storm app and show the projected path of the system? Oh, Lord, is there something else out there?
I could take a look. I haven't had any little alert dings to say of anything of significant concern. Okay, so yeah, I know something is coming off of Africa, but it's so far out. It does look like it's tracking a bit down to the south, so it's a bit too early to tell. I would say once they give it an invest name, my computer models will be able to start pulling some stuff. So keep your eyes out. It is more south than we prefer at this time of year, for sure. So it's something to keep an eye out on. I'll have to spend some time doing some plugging in some data to really see if what might be going on in the next 5 or so days. But it's at least whatever it is going on with the system, it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. You're looking at least a week out. So
yeah, a little bit early. So Rachel says, Kevin is doing such a good job. And yes, tailor the message to the hesitant. Explain to the religious that the Ministers Association came out, has said religion is no reason not to take the shot. Those worrying about the side effects, that the HSA has shared the data and nobody's seriously ill from the jab. No one has died from it. The rumors are untrue. And people are blaming the vaccine for medical issues that are not connected. Tell young folks that COVID, not the vaccine, is linked to infertility, which is very, very true.
100%.
Yes. And there's something in what Rachel just said that made me think. There was the bit about... religion. Someone also sent something. I think it was, let me see if I can find it, from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that they have issued a message basically saying that what their official position is on COVID as well, on the vaccine, and they are supporting the vaccine. So they have told their church members and the like to please get vaccinated. They're like, this is saving people's lives. So yeah, if you have to rely on a church to tell you what to do, by all means,
that's one of the things that we did a lot of outreach to. So, part of my role is to reach out to community partner organizations, and our religious organizations is a big part of that, reaching our community members. And we actually specifically targeted a lot of the Black churches because when you got an elderly Black individual supporting the public health mission, they will bring their kids and grandbabies that they're likely raising to get them vaccinated. And so we did a lot of targeted outreach with religious leaders to host vaccine pop-up events at their church on a Sunday or even a Saturday or so, to make sure that we are trying to get them to, because it's all about the right message at the right time from the right person in order to save lives. So if you have the leader of your congregation leading some of that messaging for you, they might not be the health expert, but they are the trusted individual that people are taking advice from. You ultimately could win them over. So this is all about risk communication and making sure that we are using the people that are out there to reach the people that are following them, like social media influencers. That is one of the folks that need to really help out with this effort for the younger individuals, to really get them to get vaccinated, because worldwide a lot of the people in their 30s and stuff, they're not getting vaccinated, and they need to be vaccinated as well.
Absolutely. And I'll actually pull up this message from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I know we have a lot of Seventh-day Adventist persons in the local community. My grandfather was actually a Seventh-day Adventist. A lot of people don't know that, but he was. And he was very, very strict with, I must tell you, he was very, very, sorry. He was actually very, very strict with his beliefs regarding the Sabbath, especially as it related to keeping the Sabbath. Listen, you didn't do nothing in his house on the Sabbath. No cooking, no cleaning. He had a helper when he died in his 90s, and he had a helper that would be there. But believe me when I tell you, the helper was not permitted to lift a finger. She was just there. As he got older, he lost his sight when he was in his 90s and so on. So she would assist him with some of the things that he needed to get done. But no, honey child, you weren't doing anything on the Sabbath in terms of work. But the church has definitely taken a position, and I think that that's important to let people know, because rightfully so, Kevin, people will be influenced by different people who they see as instrumental in their lives. For me personally, none of those people have an influence on me versus like scientific data. I have to be honest with you. Like, if a church minister said, "Oh, don't do this," I would be like, what does the science say? So I'm not I'm not convinced necessarily by someone just because they're of the church. Like, I need a little bit more than that. And everybody, I think, is different. So some people will listen to a pastor kind of no matter what he or she says. And to me, those are people who end up with Nikes in California, deceased in a bed because they believe some guy who said space aliens are going to come and get you. I think you always question, and the good book gives you common sense for a reason. So Miss Brenda says good for them. Rachel is sharing a link, which is you'll have to click on that directly from Facebook. Vin says, I think we should do monthly check-ups to achieve proper stats with ease. We'll be ready to open. Some may have COVID and not know it. Well, Vin, without a doubt, that's exactly what has happened in this community. This just hasn't happened this week. There's been community transmission, but we just didn't know it. And now, because of a couple situations, again, the one in Northside would have gone completely undetected if my family member didn't have some other health issues. She didn't go in because of any respiratory or COVID-like symptoms. She went in for something else, but because she needed to be admitted to the hospital, they tested her, and that's how they accidentally discovered that she was COVID positive. So Vin, absolutely.
And Sandra, I want to really expand on that a little bit more, where a lot of miscommunication started to come up when it came back to individuals who are fully vaccinated spreading COVID, the virus. So you said your family member is fully vaccinated, correct?
Yes.
Had no symptoms, right? So a lot of people who are what you call a breakthrough case, which is a fully vaccinated individual who ends up still getting the virus, just like someone getting chickenpox a second time after originally having it. Similar situation. Well, she's fully vaccinated. She didn't have really any of the traditional COVID symptoms. So more likely, she might have been spreading the virus to other people without absolutely knowing she was ever sick. And so it just shows, and when they started to message out, vaccinated people could spread COVID, that is a case of where that potentially could have happened. And it seems like it did, because I think you said the helper ended up testing positive eventually as well. So she was able to spread it to someone without even knowing she had it. And so
listen, I don't think that people... I was going to say that I don't think that she was the one who's spreading it. I think other people spread it to her.
Right. But when she had it, she would have been infectious for some period of time and unknowingly infecting someone else. Yeah. So potentially, I mean, it just all depends on how she carried out her days, who she was in contact with, if that person was fully vaccinated, because just because you're exposed to it does not mean you're going to get it. But if you're fully vaccinated, it significantly lowers that chance of getting it. So I think the latest data is, but don't hold me to it if I'm wrong. I think if you're unvaccinated, I think it was 70% chance higher if you're unvaccinated. I think that was the number that I last saw. But again, this data does change frequently. And speaking of breakthrough cases, I mean, I do have access to the breakthrough cases that we have in the state of Florida, and especially here in the county that I serve. And if you're fully vaccinated, you're still at such a low risk of getting it. Our breakthrough cases range somewhere between 2 and 4%, mostly kind of right under 2, but it seems like you have a higher chance of having a breakthrough case when you are immunocompromised, you're an elderly individual, you have a lot of other underlying issues, a lot of other health issues going on. You seem to have a little higher chance of end up being a breakthrough case, which makes sense, which is why if you look at a lot of the recommendations for the booster vaccine, they're talking about it should be prioritized and really for those who are older and severely immunocompromised. But when you come to just your average, more or less healthy person that don't have a lot of other issues going on, it's very, very low amounts, which shows how effective this vaccine really, really is. And so just wanted to put that out there, that yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there, things that are nuanced, things that are kind of taken out of context. And so people really need to understand the true picture behind this.
Yes. And speaking of the true picture, this is sort of an interesting point, Kevin. You know, on, I think it was Monday's show here on the program, we were talking about this very likely possibility that infections are coming in through illegal means on these drug canoe boats. Now, did you notice yesterday during the press conference that the governor himself actually said it?
Yes, he did. He surely did. And so that was, I know you brought it to light earlier. And I think people kind of knew that in the background because we know there's a lot of illegal activity that comes in from the sea. Cayman does have a lot of drugs that do come in from the shoreline. And of course, a lot of those drugs are coming from places that have very high COVID infection rates. And so obviously there's a good chance someone's going to bring it to our shores that way, and absolutely spot on. That's a possibility of how some of these, some of the community transmission cases began.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, and maybe CMR, I'll take a little bit of credit for that we gave them, the government, the power to, or the courage to say what we all know is actually happening. Yeah. I think sometimes they don't want to say stuff because they don't want to maybe offend people. Like, I'm not really sure. Don't know. I don't know.
But it's the truth, and everybody really does know that happens. I know the Cayman Coast Guard and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Air Operations Unit, they do a lot of surveillance, but Cayman has a lot of borders. They cannot be everywhere. So I mean, I do believe that we should have a larger Coast Guard type setup if you really want to keep the drugs and stuff from coming into the shores. If you think about it, even here in the United States, they have a much larger capacity to monitor their shoreline, but it still comes in here as well. So, I mean, no matter how big it is, you're going to have that illegal activity. And so just doing the best you can to manage it is essential.
All right, so let's review for the benefit, Kevin, of our listeners, what actually went down yesterday in case they missed the press conference. So basically, we have, let me just make sure I'm looking at the correct press release here. So we have the government deciding to pause reopening their reopening plan, which would have been phase 3 among new COVID-19 measures. Now, let me say this. There's always been, people were saying yesterday, oh yeah, they knew that a protest was coming, whatever. People don't listen very well. I mean, I hate to say this, but people do not listen very well at all. From the onset at the Chamber Forum, and I'm going to go back and find the clip and show you guys what the good premier actually said. He always said that the reopening plan and the different phases of the reopening plan were subject to constant review and revision. That was said from day one.
Yep. So every press conference
never,
as well.
Yes, it was never a fast and furious plan. This is a definite date. As we saw, it was moved from September to October already, and he said, if we have more than one cluster of community transmission that's unrelated, we will then, use that as our reason or litmus test or whatever you want to call it to put things on pause. That was said months ago, folks. Keep up and pay attention. So this isn't a surprise to me that the government has taken this decision. I think it is in line with, as Kevin has said, if you've been listening, what they have consistently been saying. They've not done anything different in terms of their messaging. Now, here are the facts. We have 3 students in total at Georgetown Primary School who have tested positive for COVID-19. One child, who was the original child that alerted them that they might have an infection at the community level within the primary school, was symptomatic. So this child presented with flu-like symptoms, and thank God they got tested, and that child tested positive. That obviously caused the school to go into immediate lockdown, and they're now going through the process of testing everyone. So as of yesterday, they had 45 persons tested that were connected to Georgetown Primary. 28 persons thus far had received their results, and they're continuing to test the remaining individuals, okay? What they have determined is, so far with the outbreak in Northside, which is at least 3 persons, the 3 persons from Georgetown Primary, plus a couple other positives, we basically have several different households now accounting to 7 positive cases in different geographical locations, with none of them having all an interconnection between each other. So the 7 are not connected. So we have a cluster at the school, they're connected. We have a cluster at Northside, they're connected. And we announced yesterday there's actually another case, which the government hasn't yet provided any details on, but we know this to be, we can say it because we know it to be 100% accurate, that there is an actual person at SEMA, at Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, who is also tested positive. Now, she happens to be connected to Georgetown Primary. So there is a connection there and how she could have potentially been exposed. So, there's that. And there also is a rumor afoot. We talked about this yesterday, and we covered this in a story because St. Ignatius sent out a press statement that a child at St. Ignatius has also tested positive. Now, the interesting thing about the statement from St. Ignatius is Catholic, as most people call it, I think, they actually haven't said one way or another if the person has it. They just said, we're waiting on public health to get back to us, and until then, we shouldn't speculate. If I was a speculating person, which sometimes we are, and listening to what my sources are saying, I'd probably lean on the side of they probably have an infection, but they'll let us know later on today for sure. So hang tight to that. Speculation, not confirmation. So, we'll see what they come back with. And that might then cause their school to be shut down as well. And, we'll see from there. So let me just go back to looking at what the government has decided to do. So again, they've got these separated clusters of people who are positive. So this now qualifies Cayman for what is called level 1 of community transmission, still considered a very low level. Contact tracing, again, continues to be done. There was one other case that he said was positive before the press conference, but they didn't have enough information on that one as yet in terms of contact tracing and so on. I'm not sure if that's a SEMA person. I'm kind of thinking it might have been, but I can't say with 100% certainty. So what else did we do? We're going back to mandatory mask wearing. So the regulations will change this week, probably by indoors. Friday. Mm-hmm. Sorry?
For indoors. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So some changes coming down the pipeline. Some crowd limits. So for indoors, the proposed limit is 100 persons. Outdoors, it could be moved to 250 persons.
50. Mm-hmm.
Quarantine period is going to go up. And And what else was there? I feel like there's something.
Yeah, so for quarantine changes, those who are fully vaccinated, originally it was 5 days. It's now going to be moved to 7 days, and they're going to test on day 8 for unverified vaccinated individuals.
Yes.
It's 10 days for their quarantine, and then for unvaccinated individuals, it's 14 days. And so I just want to put that into a kind of perspective of how it's done here in the United States, which is not how Cayman does theirs. Cayman is using a higher standard actually than the test out option here, or than the way you kind of end quarantine here. Here in the United States, the latest guidance from the CDC is after you receive your positive test, if you tested positive, all you do is count 10 days from that positive test, and then you don't need to test out. You don't need to take another test, but then you're free from quarantine or isolation, because technically there's a bit of verbiage between that. Quarantine is for people who are contacts, they're not sure about a case. It becomes isolation when you are in fact infected with the virus, but that's just a nuance. So let's say if you test positive, you count 10 days from that positive test, and then you could be released from staying at home more or less and away from other individuals. So in Cayman, I think they're going 14 days and then testing on day 15, which is what the original CDC recommendation was, but then they adjusted it because enough evidence came in showing that you might still test positive after day 10. However, you are no longer infectious. You're not able to get someone else sick after that period. And obviously there's an incentive that they want to reduce it to the most reasonable amount so people could get back to their lives without really causing a risk to the public. So that's the standard that they're using for unverified vaccinated people is 10 days, and then unvaccinated people those 14 days, and then they're re-implementing the geotagging, even though they said that there's no real evidence to show that those people are really going out of wherever they're staying in quarantine at. It's more people coming to visit them. That seems to be the issue, but again, what you don't know, you don't know. So they said that it's going to err on the side of caution, and they're going to put back in that geotagging. No vaccinated visitors allowed to come to the Cayman Islands. The only unvaccinated people that are able to return or come into Cayman's borders legally would be Caymanians, residents, and visitors that visitors can't be unvaccinated, but dependents is what I should say. A dependent of a Caymanian or a dependent of a resident. If they're unvaccinated, they'll be able to come here. And then they did highlight how vulnerable the Sister Islands is because of just their location. They don't have that higher level of medical care there. And so they have also a very aged population. A lot of elderly individuals live there. So they also looking at different measures to make sure that they are protecting our sister islands as well.
Yes. Eden says, Josh Pearl, we're experiencing what Australia went through just last month. 0 community spread to thousands positive in just a couple of weeks. Not being alarmist, but it gives very good context to the do's and don'ts that helped and hurt them. If we're not going to mandate vaxxers for teachers, I believe we need to do regular testing right now. A tracing app would be great, but it might be too late as far as this outbreak.
Let me touch on that. Let's really put this into perspective. Australia, they were doing pretty good overall. They still protected their citizens much better than a lot of other countries. At the same time, there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy in Australia as well. Yeah. And so if you look at their actual unvaccinated population, that's still a very large percentage of individuals, which allows the virus to spread much faster as well. And then also, again, they escalated things really, really quickly. But you have to really put it into perspective. Cayman is in a better position because, again, we have a lot less people, easier to be able to carry out some of the public health missions than over there, where it's a much larger population, and we just have a much higher vaccination rate. So Cayman is in a better position, but it's not completely where it needs to be. We're getting close, but we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me just see. We got a few more comments coming in. John says hashtag time to open. Darlene says, Sandy, did you see in the news today where Nicki Minaj is telling the people reason not to take the jab? I don't particularly pay attention to much of what Nicki Minaj says. I'll be honest with you. She's not an influencer for me, but I can certainly look that up. Sue says, yes, crazy girl. Rachel says Nicki Minaj was scolded by her commenters for spreading false nonsense, and now she's asking people which vaccine she should take. What a hot mess. Ms. Brenda says, that's good proof that even with underlying problems, if you're vaccinated and contract the virus, you still won't get really ill. Well, definitely it improves your chances significantly. I mean, there's no fast rules here. I saw someone commenting yesterday about someone said, well, what should I do? You know, I guess they don't want to wear masks and all the other things that we know work. And someone said, oh, you know, good nutrition and be healthy. Did I hear that sentence in the same sentence as Caymanians? Now y'all need to stop the foolishness. We are some of the most unhealthy people on the planet. Obese, most of us, including myself. I got a good 50 pounds I could shed without even blinking. We don't like to exercise. You know, if we have to go somewhere that's right across the street, we got to drive over there instead of walking. That's the only good thing that came out of COVID. I saw more people walking just because they were anxious to get outdoors than ever. Now that has all fallen away. Y'all gone back to driving everywhere. You know, you stopped exercising. Our diet is atrocious. We love our turtle meat full of fat and carbs and all this bread kind. We don't load up on vegetables and fresh fruits and all this sort of stuff. So the vast majority of Caymanians are, I mean, I almost chuckled when I saw the person comment about, oh, good nutrition and whatever. But listen, the truth of the matter is there has been no factor, and I was listening to this recently from some qualified individuals, that there's been no single package that you can say, if you do all of these things in terms of your overall health, that somehow you will be in a better position to fight off COVID. There have been people who've been fitness gurus, healthy, you know, the best shape of their lives, and COVID-19 has reduced them to shell of themselves or taken their lives. Yes, if you have comorbidities, if you're overweight, if you have high blood pressure, if you smoke and do all these other things, you're more likely to have a much more difficult time with COVID. But again, that does not exempt anyone who doesn't do any of those things and who's super healthy from being taken under by COVID. That's why people tell you this whole idea of natural immunity. I mean, once you get it and you got it, then okay. But it is too risky to try to encourage that line of thinking that let's just all go get infected and we'll be fine, because the hospitalization rate is too high with COVID. The death rate is too high with COVID. And there is this thing, which I think Eden sent a link for earlier, about long haul COVID. So even if you get it and you manage to survive, you have a fairly good chance of having to deal with long haul COVID, which is a devastating situation. So it's just not worth the risk. You know, it's just crazy. Of course, you should be as healthy as you can be. That's always good for everything in life. Claudia says, I totally understand and follow Kevin. My hubby and I were both fully vaccinated in Florida. My hubby, who has health issues and more vulnerable, contracted COVID, but did not have any symptoms at all. Me, on the other hand, going to the point I was just saying, even though I slept in the bed and was exposed, but I'm thankfully very healthy and I tested negative. Wow. You're super fortunate.
Yep, I actually had a good conversation with her when she was going through her experience. You know, she was up there and she knows what I do here, and she gave me a call and I mean, I'm glad everything worked out. And I mean, it just goes to show first time I'm seeing how effective vaccines are.
Yeah.
Sandra,
and she makes a note that she was, more importantly, vaccinated. She says, what I'm trying to say is I feel that the vaccine protected me plus my immune system, but it's also protected my husband. Even though he contracted the virus, he did not become ill. Brenda also makes the point that the situation with my relative is good proof of how effective the vaccines are.
Absolutely. And Sandra, I know one of the comments that you made is that, if you are fully vaccinated, it doesn't, you could still end up in the hospital, especially if you have a lot of ththings going on. And I want people to understand that even though that you might hear of cases like that, the chance of, you dying from it is still so much lower.
Yeah.
And so I want people to not, take it and then say, well, you said X, Y, and Z without really hearing the full thing. So I want to make sure I just added that. But look at the data you showed the Bahamas charts. If you go to a lot of other hospitals throughout the US, a lot of them are doing the same exact thing, showing what is going on within their own hospital. And again, it is very, very, very telling. And it shows if you are unvaccinated, a lot of people are there unvaccinated. If you only got one out of the two vaccines, you still got a good amount of you showing up in the hospital. But then those who are in the ICU on a ventilator and all that sort of stuff, it's such a small percentage of fully vaccinated people that are there.
Yes, and Ms. Brenda's asking about this rumor that CHHS has 2 cases. We've not heard that, so there've been a lot of rumors that haven't been true. There was one about Savannah Primary having 6 positive cases. That was not true. CHSS, that one, to the best of my knowledge, likewise, isn't true. So yes, there's been a lot of rumors floating around.
And with those rumors and stuff, folks, I mean, you're going to get the information as soon as it could be confirmed. Sandra's not going to wait on releasing it once she gets it confirmed. The government is doing a good job at keeping everyone updated as well. Once they also have confirmation, they're a little bit slower with certain things, but of course, rightfully so. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that goes into the background. So give them a break. Let them do their jobs. They will. No one's hiding any information here. It's going to get out. So don't be spreading all these rumors and stuff. Just wait for the official information, and as soon as you get that, as soon as that information is confirmed, it's going to be released. So just hold your horses. It's coming out.
Absolutely. And we know more than anybody else how quickly people want information. So as I hear the rumors, believe me, I am reaching out to the relevant authorities to try to get them to confirm. So as soon as I get confirmation, I will put it up. No, this is a rumor. And yes, this is true, and so on. I mean, I got confirmation. I heard it from a first source about the SEMA person, and I waited a couple hours, and then I got confirmation again from a secondary source, and then a third source. And I said, okay, now I know this is 100% accurate. I can put this up without any fear of contradiction. So Eden says, excellent points, Kevin. We need to leverage our small size, tech, information, and vaccination rate. We're in a good position, but need to be more proactive. I believe.
Absolutely. 100% I agree with you, Eden.
Yep. So Ms. Brenda and others are asking for things like teachers should be mandatory vaccination. So one of the interesting things that the Premier said is that they're going to be looking at and reviewing travel back and forth to the sister islands. So there's always been this understanding that Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, which have much smaller populations, also have a much older population base. And so the government is very keen to protect those elderly persons as much as possible. And probably a lot of children also that can't get vaccinated. So what do you think the government is going to do in relation to the BRAC? Do you think they're going to say no travel back and forth if you're not fully vaccinated?
It's a good question. I really don't know what direction they obviously hinted there's some discussions going on. There's probably a whole lot more discussions that need to occur. Yes. But again, there are a lot of older people there. There are a lot of children there. And they also don't have I mean, think about it this way. If you happen to be in the Sister Islands and you get seriously ill, how are you going to get your advanced medical treatment? There's no real hospitals there to really do that type of advanced care that is required. Exactly. And then, okay, so how are you going to get to Grand Cayman's hospital, the Cayman Islands hospital, in order to get that care? Well, you're going to likely have to send that police helicopter on over. And now you're really adding, well, one, the tremendous costs associated with that, as well as tremendous risk to other individuals. And so you really got to balance, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Are we going to send them by boat, or what if the weather's bad? So many different logistical challenges with that. Are we going to set up some sort of facility there to take care of some critically ill patients? But what's the right size for that? There's a lot of things that they really need to consider, just throwing different ideas out there. that needs to occur, and so it's going to be a tough solution on how to really best prepare them. I don't know. I can't even guess what direction it would go into. There's going to, one mind will not be the solution. They need a whole lot of discussions to come up with a real proper plan. And that's one thing I will credit this government for doing. They are listening to a lot of different viewpoints to ultimately come together and make a decision.
And that's why I wanted to share that the medical consensus from the Dental Medical Clinic, Dental Medical Council, and all of those medical professionals locally in Cayman said to open. So Marshall says, despite his fear of needles, he still took the vaccine as soon as it became available. Ms. Brenda said the next time we're having this discussion, she wants to share something personal, but she's got to run. Ricardo is asking about the $105,000. Ricardo, tune into tomorrow's show. We're going to delve into that in details. And rest assured that that I fully intend to appeal that decision one way or the other. So we'll certainly keep you updated. Rachel says the vaccine works with our immune system. It sends a message telling your body to make a positive spike protein sample. So we're going to get some experts on the show, folks. We're putting that together. So one other thing to note, that they have tested or swabbed over 600 people at Georgetown Primary yesterday, and those results are gradually going to come in overnight. It takes about an hour and a half, from what I understand, for results to be available. From my own COVID test last week, we were sitting there in the emergency room waiting, and they would not allow us to go up to the room until that came back all clear for both my daughter and I. So 600, that's a lot of processing. I know they've got Doctors Hospital helping them out with trying to get those tests done as well.
And the technology really has changed over the, from the beginning of when testing first came out, that it is, a much faster process as long as you have enough individuals trained to carry out those tests. Of course, when they get into the genetic sequencing, that is a much longer process that takes a whole lot more time, and really a lot less people are qualified to really carry out that function. So it seems like they got a pretty good setup. What I do wish they would have changed, though, is kind of develop a testing model like what we do when we have a large outbreak type of setup that we want to really test a select group of people, is that we do drive-up testing. So pretty much...
Sorry, what was that term?
Drive-up testing.
Oh, drive-up testing,
yeah. Right, so people pretty much...
I think that's available. I think that is available at the what's it called, at Doctors Hospital. But I suspect they wanted everyone to come to a singular location instead of encouraging people to be all over, because you saw what was happening yesterday. There were people who were supposed to be staying at home as part of the Georgetown primary school contingency. They were seen in restaurants in Savannah. They were going to the hospital for their regular appointment. So it's like they kind of are missing the memo. Cayman 49er wants to know, can vaccinated work permit holders travel? Travel where? I guess Cayman 49er is a question.
But the answer to that would be yes, if I understand the question correctly, because
travel
they are
into Cayman, I guess is what he's saying.
If it's coming back to Cayman, yes. If they are legally able to work in the Cayman Islands, or if it's their dependent, they could travel.
Yes. Jonathan has me laughing here. He says, I miss my tourist women. These long-term relationships are not working. Open the borders. Jonathan, behave yourself. Believe me, lots of people have found a spouse online. We should probably send you some online mail order, Russian bride or something. You'll figure it out, Jonathan. You'll be okay. Or try a little bit of local flavor. The pandemic might encourage you to look at what's right in front of you. Dr. Lee also said that he is going to be using the standards set by the World Health Organization in terms of contact tracing, whereby only primary contacts of someone who is positive will be asked to isolate themselves. And here's how that is defined, folks. So a direct contact includes someone living in the same household, or someone having immediate physical contact, such as a hug or kiss, and being less than 2 meters or 6 feet from an infected person for more than 15 minutes. Yes.
Yeah. And let me tell you about contact tracing if Cayman evolves into widespread community spread, not just the community spread we have there, but what widespread community spread like we have throughout America. So once you have widespread community spread, contact tracing is really it's really difficult to do and really not as effective. So you really have to prioritize those efforts. I'm going to tell you here in Hillsborough County, Florida, that's the Tampa Bay area. And when we were at the peak of the Delta surge, we were averaging somewhere between 15 to 1,800 new cases every single day. Now, I only got about 150 health contact tracers. You do the math on that. When a contact trace investigation is underway, it could take anywhere between 30 minutes to about an hour and a half, all depends on one investigation. You do the math. 150 people, a couple thousand practically new cases, you're not going to have enough time in a day. So sometimes it's 2 or 3 days on the road. So we prioritize it. Schools, long-term care facilities, nursing homes, more vulnerable settings, fire rescue personnel, those individuals were prioritized because they are dealing with more of the vulnerable folks as opposed to most of the country, most of the residents who are able to be okay living and going through COVID. We don't want them spreading it, but at the same time, the contact tracing effort is not as important as really making sure that we are getting on top of it for those who are more vulnerable. And so again, vulnerable individuals are prioritized with it. So if Cayman gets to the point where again we have widespread community spread there, the team of contact tracers will not be able to keep up with that caseload. And that's just one of the things that is certainly happening worldwide.
Yes. So Shauna says before the vaccine, if you had T-cell immunity, you had and have all the protection you need. That means you couldn't get it again, but you can get COVID more than once. If you had COVID, then your cells remember they had COVID. So even if you have it again, you have the protection you need. If you take the vaccination, you have a better chance of surviving and have the best kind of protection. So not 100%. The issue is you can actually get COVID more than once, and your response one time might not be the same response that you have the second or third time that you actually get infected with COVID. So that's a thing, right? Speaking of, we were talking about, how quickly we can get stuff done in terms of the testing. Here's what the HSA has shared, folks. If you're looking for a job, they're looking for temporary staff for their COVID response team. Let me move that comment off so we can all see the bottom. So administration people, healthcare aides, data entry, and swabbers. So you can apply at hsa.ky. Or you can email your application to hsa.jobs@hsa.ky. So folks, if you're unemployed, the HSA is looking for some temporary staff. Please reach out to them and see what you can get done. So Ralston says, why are Caymanians so very paranoid about COVID-19 while not even one Caymanian has died of it? Well, I think that's the thing, is nobody wants that to be the test that we use. We don't want anybody to die of it. But yes, paranoia is definitely spreading. 2,000 plus.
And remember, Cayman's been in a bubble, so that's why Cayman hasn't had more severe impact. So just use logic behind that.
Yeah. All right, folks. Very good. We are out of time already. Can you believe it, Kevin? The time sure does go by quickly in the morning. So 2 hours went by very, very fast. We'll see. We don't know if there's a press briefing today or not. We'll certainly keep you guys in the loop to find out if there is. Of course, we will update you as soon as we have any additional information. I'm just checking quickly my email messages to see if anything has come in that's like earth-shattering this morning. Nope. So, yeah, I think that's where we're at. Okay, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Everyone have a fantastic day. Stay safe. Do what you need to do. You wear your mask when you're out and about in public. And if you're not vaccinated, please get vaccinated.
All right. Beautiful. Louis says, keep defending the truth and have a great day, everybody. Thank you so very much. Hoping that you guys have a fantabulous day. I've actually got a lot to do today. Just a quick message from our partners over at Milker Brokers. If you're trying to get ready for Christmas, Christmas is right around the corner, folks. Start early, plan early.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.